The second deal is one of the coolest moves in card magic, but it's also really hard to do. About a year ago, I decided to learn it. Here's how good my second deal looked in the beginning. Fast forward to the biggest Magic convention in the world, Blackpool 2024. I actually found myself using the second deal day in and day out while surrounded by many of the world's best magicians. Here's a clip featuring one of YouTube's favorite magicians, Jack Rhodes. Now, you may have seen that kind of second deal before, and honestly, we're pretty curious here. What about these? Okay, I hope you enjoyed those. If you want to learn them and you can't wait, there is a link in the description. Otherwise, stick around until the end of the video and we'll give you all the details on our latest release. But before we get to that, so many of you have been a part of this journey and have watched our progress with the second deal that we felt it would be only fair to share with you what we've learned so far about how to do the standard second deal, our tips handling, and what we've picked up about the move in this time. I like to hold the deck so the bottom left corner is wedged into this flesh of the thumb. Key thing when doing the push off is that you don't want the cards separating. Plus these cards are obviously both rectangular, they're all the same shape. If this bottom corner right here, if this is lined up, even though this is just a small part of the card, the rest of the card will be lined up. When you're doing the push off, if the cards are dug into, sort of wedged into the thumb, flesh of the thumb wraps around these corners. Now eventually the card is going to sort of leave, it's going to come over here, but to get that initial alignment and to help those cards stay together with that initial pushing over, I think pivoting the cards off the thumb and having the bottom corner wedged into the thumb is useful because it helps keep them together. Like right here, these corners, this side and this side around this corner are both being kept by the thumb in there, both of them in the same position, which is helping the rest of the cards stay in alignment. And I feel like once I've picked up that initial momentum, I've been able to separate from the rest of the deck. The fingers below are helping, I'm just extending, and it's easier to just kind of keep that momentum going. When you're trying to push two, don't push on the body of the card like so, because you're only going to get one. Push from the side. And so I use this part of my thumb right here, this left side, and it's very minor contact. It's quite subtle. I'm going to push, I'm almost catching right there. And then these fingers here are just allowing the top two to come over, but they're acting as a barrier. They're blocking any cards below that from being pushed out. So just practice and do this slowly. Getting those first two cards, letting these fingers block the rest, pushing, and just doing this time and time again, you will just get more of a feel for it. How much you push the card can vary depending on the type of deal. I find that a lot of the time, for me, I'm just using the second deal in the instance of placing one card and using it as a card switch. Some people will use it for multiple deals, and I think depending on the purpose, your deal might look slightly different. If I'm just doing one card, I like to push out quite far because I think this looks good. It looks so clear that it's just one card. Let's say we're doing that, we're going to push out further. This hand is going to come up. Middle finger is going to make contact with the lower card. The thumb is going to sort of pretend to be making contact with this card, but it's not, because if you make contact here, you're not going to be able to pull it back, which is what you need to do. So it's going to come in as if you're making contact, so it might look like you are, but it's really just kind of hovering on the surface, making not much contact, if at all, so that this thumb can pull that card back as we then take this card. A couple of points as you take it. if you tilt the deck upwards, the sort of glide, as we call it, of that card being pulled back is going to be less visible. I think most of the time, attention is going to be on this card or this supposed card and the hand dealing it, so people aren't going to see the glide or the pulling back of the top card anyway, especially because it's done quite quickly. So you really want to minimize that. You come up, you tilt, and that way someone from the front isn't going to be able to see the back. You pull back, deal the next card. And you can play around with how much you do this, how subtly how kind of maybe a subtle tilt, more exaggerated, in between, or just doing it without and just trusting that people aren't going to see that because the attention is going to be on this hand and this card moving here. So a slight upwards tilt if you want, and then play around with whether you're going side to side, if you're going straight out, or if you're doing this kind of diagonal where your audience is here and you're turned on a diagonal. This hand, the back of your hand and your arm are helping cover anything that's going on here that might not already be disguised or covered. Now, if you're doing multiple cards, I find it easier just to do a minimal push here because you're going for speed and you want to be able to draw back quite quick and push the next one so you can keep that motion and that speed. I find it's easier if I push just a little bit, but I still make the same motion. It's still, the mechanics are the same. Middle finger, touch in, thumb, coming over, this sliding back. But it just means, because it takes less time for this card to come back and get ready for the next one, you can be ready again sooner to then do the same again on the next card. And now it's just easier to reset and keep it going. I find that sometimes with this one, the push off is, if I'm really getting into speed of it, perhaps I'm, if I want to get the most perfect clean push off, then I'm going to want to sort of make sure the deck is readjusted and right in my hand before I do it. But if I'm doing it fast, I'm doing multiple, I may not always get that chance. Like right here, this is a good example. That is not as clean as it could be, but I think at speed, that's not going to be noticeable. And so that's potentially the trade-off here. But again, I don't think this is something people notice. And in this case, sometimes, and this does differ slightly, the usual push-off, again, you're pushing just from the side and you're getting that perfect, hopefully more or less perfect push. When you're doing this speed deal, sometimes when you get back to here, I'm actually pressing down and I'm contacting the surface area on top of the second card rather than the side, and then I push like this. But that's still good enough, and that can be quicker than getting the perfect reset and going from the side. So this one here, we're doing the same, pushing the card over. Again, giving maybe a little tilt if we want to as we come up, help cover this pulling back motion. And then the thumb and ring finger or middle finger, depending on your preference, are going to make contact. They're just going to contact this as if it's one card. But as this card, as the thumb peels back, the thumb is only making contact with top card, so only the top card is going to move back, and you're going to be left holding the one below that. And with this, you have more time to reset because this motion, turning the card over and placing it down, gives you time to get ready again. So this, I think, is easier to sort of repeat. Etc. Now, you'll have seen the clip of me doing this. A little disclaimer, sometimes when you break a move down, you start doing it slower and trying to break it down. I might find myself doing it slightly differently than I would if I was doing it at speed. So for the ultimate sort of guide on how it should look, I would refer you to the one done at speed, but hopefully those pointers help. The other variation we showed, what you're going to do is come in, hand is going to rotate, so fingers on top, thumb is below. Thumb is going to make contact. It's the same as normal, except for you just sort of alternating rather than these fingers or this finger making contact underneath the thumb. These are going to pretend to grab this top card, but they're going to be sort of hovering, not making tons of contact, light touch. Thumb pulls back with this one, and this one gets dealt. And again, you can play with how much you tilt. What you might also see is if you go far over with the fingers, they may also be covering that pullback as you go with that one. Quick note, when we first worked on the second deal, something I noticed after the fact was when I do the deal, So after I push the cards over and take, these fingers being here create this little step where then this card is going to come and drop back onto the deck. And sometimes, I don't think if you're doing this in person and watching, that is hardly noticeable. And to be honest, looks very similar to a normal deal because that step also happens when you do a normal deal. It's just that step exists, or that step is there for longer when you're doing a second deal perhaps. So over time, decreasing the size of that step can then help when it comes to doing the deal and this card coming back. That step is so much less visible as opposed to them being up here. Okay, so this is actually in my left hand, and I don't do the second deal from my left hand, but I'm just trying to implement those things that I was talking about, using these fingers here, using the sort of very subtle contact here, slight bevel, thumb. That time I got 3, but as I kept going, I ended up with 2, but it just took longer than I would like. So don't worry if this is what is happening in the beginning, because as you can see, even though I know, and my brain knows exactly how this move should work, I'm still getting that pesky third card. And it's just gonna take so many, hundreds and hundreds of reps doing this before it also becomes so natural for this hand. I guess not that I'm actually, we'll see if I put those reps in on my left hand, but I'm just sort of thinking if I was a beginner, this is probably how it would be feeling. And so don't be discouraged if it's feeling this way. Just gotta put the reps in. Because as you know, I made this tutorial, so I know exactly how it should be done. But just because I know how it should be done in my brain doesn't mean my fingers have that muscle memory. And so for you, if you've watched it and you think, oh, I understand everything that's going on, but I can't do the move, does that mean I'm doing something wrong? No, it just means that you need time to build that muscle memory, do those repetitions, and just get that fine touch. So thank you for watching the video. Before we finish, if you'd like to learn those moves you saw earlier in the video, we just released our latest project, the Silk Switch. There's a link in the description where you can find out all about this project. There'll be a limited time offer running as of this video being launched. But whether you're watching this video the day it's released or 5 years from now, we're confident you will enjoy what you find in the project. So please do click the link in the description to learn all about the Silk Switch. We'd like to credit Andy Gladwin and his work on the Master Push-Off, which has helped many magicians learn the second deal and is also a technique quite similar to our own. We'd also like to thank Danny Goldsmith for helping us refine some of the moves you saw in this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the things, and we will see you in the next video.
It's so hard.